All right. Okay, so that works there. So the thing that happened there was the density of supplyable sinks went down. So that's the important thing. So because the volume that's being supplied didn't have this extra way, there was no other kind of way for your networks to get thicker, right? There's sort of a limit to what they can do. They've got to fit inside this thing they're supplying. Yes, of course. Then, but if we were 2D organisms running around, but we had this sort of third dimension to kind of grow in, like the tubes that supplied us could kind of have a thickness and they could grow, then we'd have different potential scalings. And that's what you get when you look at something like river networks. So we can sort of think of one big basin. We have many like sources, and now the sources are just, it's raining, if you like. I mean, sort of on average over time. And so the sources are somewhat uniformly distributed now, right? It's not like you go to a bigger scale and there are less sources, right? So this is not happening here. So we're going to have sources, the density of sources is going to be roughly constant. So again, we have this general story, this volume of the network. This piece is going to be constant because we had capillary density going down, but for rain falling, there's no sense that this is really changing much. I mean, this weird fractalness and so on to rain, right, and clouds and things, it's true. But big enough scales, basically all right. So this is a two-dimensional surface, so little d is 2. The ambient dimension, big D, is 3. So we put our 2 in here, and we get 3 over 2. So we get volume as 3 halves. And there's no way we can kind of offset that, right? What we did before was we had kind of basically a 4/3, and then rho had to scale as volume to the minus a third, so the volume of the network would fit inside organisms. But we don't care about this now because this can scale faster than that. Okay, what this is now is this is area, right? This is basin area, right? It's volume in 2D, this is basin area. And the volume of the network can scale faster than that. That's okay, right? So because there's this ambient dimension that's greater than the dimension of the shape that's being supplied or drained in this case. So really area, so this is all okay. My little pointy thing. Right? Landscape's a two-dimensional surface. I mean, I'm not saying anything profound there, but they're living in 3 dimensions. But that's the big difference, right? This is 3 is greater than 2. That is the big piece here. And 3 equals 3 for volume, for biology. So they can grow in width and depth and so on. That's often not in a lot of these big picture kind of laws we look at, but there are some potential scalings here. And we don't have to worry about that too much. All right, so let's look at actual data again, very dangerous. So, the volume, it's like the volume, so you imagine your little artificial networks that we make, these little pretend ones, or you could take a real data set where we've constructed the networks, and we know that that's a complicated, messy business, but we have this satellite data, it's on a grid, right? We're not, it's not perfect, but it's a bit of a messy thing, and we get a network out of it, and then we just put pretend rain on it, right? And let it just sort of fall down. And, right, so at any given time, you've got some basin, and there'll be all of the rain that fell, the different points back in time will be just leaving now, right? So the rain that fell, 70 clicks before will be now exiting here because it's like 70 little hops down this thing, and the rain that fell 3 clicks will be, ticks ago, will be coming out now. But basically that whole area will be going every time that will be coming out of this piece. Okay, but that means everything's kind of stacking up everywhere, right? So at the start of a stream, there's just going to be, right, it's going to fall in, rain's going to fall, and it's going to drain out straight away. Rain's going to fall in straight, but it's going to start banking up on the next one, right? Because down here, there's one little drop of rain falls at the outlet, but all of this other stuff is coming through it as well. So it's all being integrated. And so the volume of the network, in a sense, from these little artificial, so either it's a real surface or it's an artificial surface, but we kind of artificially rain on top of it, will be this. So you just sum over all the drainage areas in your volume of network. And I won't go through all this because I'm belaboring things, I suppose. But Hack's law was this story, right? So that's this kind of, that's the 3/4 Lorry area here for networks. for river networks if this h is greater than a half, right? That was this sort of something weird is going on story, and maybe there's some massive conspiracy of universality in physics that we don't understand. Okay, so if that's true, then you can figure out with those, with Horton's laws and Tokunaga's law and all this, sort of play around with them, that the volume of the network actually scales as area of the basin to the 1 plus h. All right, so you go through, do all these calculations, connect these things. You know, I don't think that's published. Yes, it is. Of course it is. What am I talking about? Yes, yes. Maybe not the explicit details. Okay, so, and then these calculations we just had, that 3 halves means that this is a half, right? This is going to be little d plus 1 over d, the whole thing. So this is going to be a half. Hack's exponent is a half for this optimal version. So this gets us back to this boring thing. So, but we can actually check real data. Banavard did this. This is this 1999 Nature paper. And it's clear they hadn't made this connection, that this 3 halves here is 1 plus a half, 1 plus h, right? What they're saying here, this is d plus 1 over d, so it's little d plus 1 over d, so this is 3 halves. So this showing, and look at that scaling. That is pretty, these are 3 different places. These are smallish networks. You know, they're not continental scale. The smallish ones, they're decent sizes, but that's a pretty good scaling for 3 halves. So the result for this was, you know, we have this theory that, of course, they get 3/4 and, you know, all this stuff, and it's crazy. But they got this one out, and this is totally correct. Unfortunately, it shows you that basins are isometric, and they are kind of boring, and, you know, this hack thing isn't really a big, crazy thing. So the optimal Hack's law is actually, but it's a little more than just dimensional analysis. There's an optimality that we've kind of argued that we can get to that shows, in fact, the dimensional analysis version has an optimal aspect to it. All right, so that was good. And then there's, so it's boring. And then there's, this is another version. This is using the data that I worked on. And so it's now continental scale. And again, this is the 3 halves scaling, and that's pretty good. We should feel happy about that. This is close to 7 orders of magnitude here. And then, of course, because this area volume has 10 orders of magnitude this way. Always good, right? Very delicious, yes. You want at least 3 in each dimension. I mean, someone will tweet at you. There'll be someone waiting around with their power law story to tweet at you that this is not right. Probably these days. Anyway. And then there'll be a little tweet rage thing. Okay, so never read the tweets. So this is great. I think this is great. It's totally great. All right.